Hey there, BookTube. Welcome back to my channel. We are back for day 8 of #DECAMORAMA. Yes, we're still doing that. And we are on day 8, which means that the theme of the stories is people playing tricks on one another. And the first story is about a rich man who falls in love with another man's wife. But when he propositions her to have an affair, she says she will do it for 200 gold florins. Shocked by how mercenary she is, the man falls out of love with her and he decides to take advantage of her instead. So he goes to her husband and asks to borrow the same amount, 200 gold florins. And while the husband is away on business, the rich man, comes to visit the woman. He brings a man who he says is a friend and gives the money to the woman and says, "This is the money I owed your husband." So she counts it and accepts it because she thinks he's using this as a cover so his friend won't be suspicious. And then, they get together for many days before the husband returns. When the husband is finally back home, the man comes to visit and tells the husband that he gave the wife the money. So the woman has to pass over the money to her husband and she got no payment for her deeds. The second story is about a priest who wants to sleep with a married woman. So when he sees her husband going on an errand, he goes to the woman's house and propositions her. And she agrees if he will pay her 5 florins. He doesn't have the money, so he gives her his cloak as collateral. However, afterwards, he decides he doesn't want to pay. So he sends and borrows her mortar and pestle. So he sends his assistant to borrow her mortar and pestle. Then, when her husband is home, he returns it. And the husband is furious that she asked the priest for the guarantee, and so she has to surrender the cloak without ever getting paid. Then the next story is about a simpleton named Calandrino who meets a traveler who tells him about some magic stones and where to find them. And of course, Calandrino, being the simpleton, he believes him. Later, he tells 2 other men about the magic stones, one of which can make a person invisible, and all 3 men set out to find them. However, the other 2 men have decided to play a trick on Calandrino, and so they leave these fake stones for Calandrino to find. So he's walking around picking up these fake stones. He thinks that he's invisible until he gets home. His wife says, "Hey dude, you're not invisible," and he's so angry that she broke the spell and beats her up. The next story is about a rector who pressures a woman into sleeping with him, and when she can take the harassment no longer, she comes up with a plan. She invites him to her bedroom, but only if he can be quiet and they can do the deed in the dark. Then she arranges for this unattractive maid to take her place, and she sets up her brothers to go get the bishop, so that when the rector is in bed with the maid, who he still thinks is the widow, the bishop comes and the brothers show him the rector in bed. So the bishop comes in and the rector has to do penance, but he's also really embarrassed about the unattractive maid that he was found in bed with. And then we have a man who realizes that a judge is not properly dressed, and so he decides to play a trick on him. While his 2 friends argue a fake case in front of the judge, the prankster crawls under the bench where the judge is seated and yanks down his breeches so that when the friends in their argument pull on the judge's robe, he's exposed. And then we meet again the same guy, Calandrino, that we met in the previous story. He's on his way to market to sell his pig, where his 2 friends, decide to trick him. Poor Calandrino. They steal his pig and hide it and tell him that they have a plan to find the culprit. They gather the neighbors together and each person has to take a pill, and the thief, they say, won't be able to swallow it. But it is Calandrino himself, the owner of the pig, who can't swallow it because they gave him some bitter pills laced with aloes. And then we have a widow who this gentleman propositions, but she isn't interested because she has another man that she's in love with, and her lover gets jealous because of all the attention that the gentleman is lavishing on her. So she decides to trick the gentleman and make her lover realize that she doesn't like this guy. So she invites the gentleman to her house and locks him in the courtyard while it's snowing, and she and her lover enjoy a warm night in bed watching the gentleman freeze outdoors. She even goes to the door and tells the gentleman, who is at this point frozen like a snowman, she tells him that she wants to open the door but she can't because her brother inside would hear. And so he continues to stay outdoors just freezing, waiting for this woman to come and just pay some attention to him. The next morning, when she finally lets him leave, he is frostbitten and intent on getting revenge. Eventually, the woman's lover, of course, leaves her for someone else, and she asks the same gentleman to help her win him back. So he gets her to climb up to a tower, naked, to cast a spell on the lover. because he tells her that he can perform necromancy. When she's there, he moves the ladder, so she's trapped for more than a day without food or water or clothes. She gets sunburned, she almost dies, and he gets his revenge. Then we have two friends, one of whom starts sleeping with the other man's wife. When the husband finds out, he gets his wife to invite the guy back and locks him in a chest. Then he invites that friend's wife over and tells her about it and threatens her that if she doesn't sleep with him, he will ruin her husband. So she agrees, and they get busy on top of the same chest that her husband is locked in. So he hears everything. But eventually they realize that all would be better if they just forgive each other and stay friends. All of them, friends together. And then we have this doctor who asks two commoners why they're so happy, and they tell him that they are privateers, that they belong to a group of men who use necromancy to get beautiful women to sleep with them and give them gifts. So the doctor says, well, I want to join. So they tell him that part of the ritual for him to join is that he has to climb atop a tomb, and this beast is going to come to get him, and he has to ride on it. But when the beast comes, it's really just one of the men in a costume, and they throw the doctor in a ditch, and his wife yells at him because she thinks he's been out having an affair. And finally, a female barber in Palermo who swindles unsuspecting merchants. This time, her victim is a man named Salabayeto, who she asks to lend her money, and then she refuses to repay him. So eventually he has to leave and go back to Naples, but he comes back to Palermo, this time with some fake goods, and he registers it at the custom house, so she thinks he has a lot more money. And she repays him the little that she borrowed, thinking that she'll get more from him. She even lends him some of her own money. But this time, he disappears. So when she has to go get the goods herself, what he registered as expensive fabric is just rough hemp cloth. And what he registered as a barrel full of oil is really just a barrel full of seawater with a little bit of oil floating on the top. Swindled. And so those are my doodles for day 8 of the Decameron. Thanks for watching this video. Leave me a comment down below if you're enjoying these videos, and we'll talk down there. So until next time, happy reading. Bye.